it's Hayden Williams here, and I'm back with another episode of the Man in the Mirror podcast. It's the place where each week I talk to a male guest and we talk self-care, self-image, grooming, entrepreneurship, and I have a sneaky peek around their bathroom cabinet and find out some of the key items in their morning and evening routines. This week, it was another face-to-face, which was amazing. So I went into central London to a very nice hotel and met up with the founder and creative director of Australian fine fragrance brand Goldfield Banks. That's Dimitri Weber. Now, I'd seen Dimitri before on a sort of virtual launch Zoom thing, but we'd never met in person before, and he was absolutely delightful, telling me about his role, about how it all happened, how he moved to Australia from France. He has a long history in the fragrance industry. Goldfield Banks, if you don't know it, is Australia's first fine fragrance brand, taking its name from the beautiful landscape of Australia with Goldfield, and Australia's first botanist, who was Joseph Banks in the 18th century. So he combined those and created this brand, absolutely forging new ground in Australia. There wasn't anything like this before, so we talk about that. And we talk about, obviously, some of the fantastic fragrances that Goldfield Banks have in their range, including things like Pacific Rock Moss, Bohemian Lime, and Sunset Hour. So I think you're going to enjoy this chat. I certainly really loved chatting to Dimitri. So here he is, Dimitri Weber, the founder and creative director of Goldfield Banks, on the Man in the Mirror podcast. Here we go. Hello, it's Man in the Mirror, and it's Hayden Williams here. And this time I've come out of the studio and I'm in a London hotel. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Dimitri Weber. Hi, Dimitri, how are you?
Good morning, Hayden. I'm good.
Thank you so much for making time this morning in your busy schedule to talk to me at Man in the Mirror. Now, I know you've come across from Australia and I guess you're here in Europe doing some visits and some PR and...
Mainly press appointments, yes. Happy to be back though in Europe.
Yeah.
Even though it's summer in Sydney, I'm happy to be back in Europe.
When were you last here?
October.
Okay, so not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
Goldfield Banks is a beautiful brand. And I'd love to find out, first of all, about your relationship with fragrance. It's always fascinating to me with brand founders. How did you get involved in fragrance? Was it a childhood thing?
It was definitely a childhood thing. I think when I can remember when at the age of 6, I started choosing my mom's fragrances. She was asking me already for my opinion. And then at a later stage, when I was about 9 or 10 years old, teachers at school were asking me for some advice on fragrances, and we were swapping little samples, those tiny little samples. And I remember back then it was so valuable, like having one little sample of Chanel or Guerlain, whatever. It was heaven. It was a treasure. It was worth much more than gold, in my opinion. And that's when I recall being very passionate about perfumes.
And did your mum have an incredible was she interested? Was that the spark? Yeah. Did she have a good collection?
She wasn't much of a collector. She just had a few good fragrances. Like there was Nina Ricci, Nina by Nina Ricci, and she had Anaïs. She had Diorissimo, classic fragrances now. But those fragrances, they are in my olfactive memory for forever. So I will... And Paris by Yves Saint Laurent.
Ah, okay. But it's interesting that you were drawn to the olfactive sense, I'm sure you're a creative person, so all the senses are important. But why do you think it was smell and fragrance? What do you think it was that drew you to that world, maybe?
I don't know. I think it was the beauty behind it, the nativity, the luxe, the real luxury back in, the 70s and 80s. The opulence, the ad campaigns were very creative from what I can remember back in the early 80s. It was all that. It was a dream. It was all the mystique around the perfume world. And there were only a handful of brands back then. Obviously it wasn't like today. But I think all of that made me dream of this fragrance world, fashion industry, the designers being involved in creating their fragrances. And, it was Dior, it was YSL, it was Chanel, it was, Rochas and brands like that. all of that. And I still remember, and I think I still have a magazine, one of those old beauty magazines that was linked to a perfumery company. I was fascinated by that, and I've always been. Always. Even today, I'm still very passionate about perfumes.
And you grew up in Belgium, is that right?
Yeah, I grew up in sort of half. My first period of my life, I grew up in France and then Belgium. My father is French. My mom is from Antwerp in Belgium. And so I grew up in Belgium. I went to boarding school in Belgium for many years. Yeah.
And what was childhood like? I mean, those interests that you had in fragrance and beauty, I mean, were you able to... Did you see yourself on that kind of path? Was it very clear to you, or did that come
Not
at a
at all.
point?
Not at all. No, I saw myself as working in fashion or being a dancer. I always wanted to become a dancer.
Were you skilled? Were you...
I think I was skilled. Yeah, I had a really right posture and
Now you say it, I can see this.
Father was always saying that I should, he called me like a horse, like I was really like straight.
You meant it as a compliment, I guess, right?
Yeah, like a horse in the sense that I was lean and a very proud animal. And anyway, but I wanted to become a dancer. But in the family, people were like, no, crazy.
Were you good enough? Were you someone that practiced a lot and was in dance
I just
school?
felt very connected. It's like 2 days ago, I went with a colleague of mine and we went to the Moulin Rouge in Paris. I'll teach you. Seeing all these dancers and the way they were moving and the acrobats, and I thought that could have been me. And because that's what I wanted to do when I was very, very young.
I'd love to go there.
I know. It's amazing. I absolutely recommend you to do it.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous show.
Last week, it was my wife's birthday, and we went to... There's a show in the West End Cabaret, but they've recreated the Kit Kat Club from 1920s Germany. So the whole experience, this really immersive experience where they encourage you to go to the theatre early. So it was an hour before.
Amazing.
But in the bars and all the communal areas, there's performers, there's musicians. They give you a shot of some sort of alcohol as you go in. Quite a small theatre in the round. And, the dancing was all that kind of Fosse style dancing was incredible. And so,
and are they dressed? Were they dressed up?
Well, not so much in the audience. I mean, it was a West End show, but the costume style was all the time was 20. So I
feel that. I got reminiscent of all of that, I think.
Yeah. But you're obviously someone that enjoys the creative arts anyway, right?
Colors and lots of it makes me dream. It makes me come alive, I think. And I mean, we don't have all that. I mean, of course, we have a lot of shows in Australia, but I never have the time to actually go and check out some shows and theaters in Australia because I'm working back to back.
Yeah.
I'm going to bed and that's it. But when I come back to Europe, I like to do
an excuse to see some things.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what? It's also incredible because when we were sitting there in the audience at the Moulin Rouge, the feathers, the women with all the bows and the feathers, they were smelling. You could smell so many amazing fragrances that they were wearing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, I can imagine some very sort of opulent, big, lousy fragrances.
We were actually 3 rows, so you could actually smell the fragrances of all these beautiful, sexy dancers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm there. I'd like to be there. So take me back then. So you were interested in dance. How did you get involved in the fragrance world? I mean, we could talk about Goldfield Banks in a sec, but what was your sort of trajectory into this?
I was very interested in fashion. So I really wanted to work in fashion, and I did some studies, and I studied plastic arts, and I wasn't really good at school. I didn't like school. I didn't like school at all. Like I had a trauma of going to school and all of that. So anyway, I as a young man, I thought about my future, and I thought, well, what am I going to do if I don't like school, and if I don't want to go into fashion, and fragrance has always been my passion. And I thought, well, why don't I just do something with fragrances? And I had the opportunity. I was very young. I can't really remember how old I was, maybe 15 or 16. I had the opportunity to work as a promoter, or I don't know how you call that, like a consultant in
like a sales,
perfumery.
Like a sales.
In the weekends, Fridays and Saturdays, because all my friends were working in in restaurants, to make some money. And I didn't want to work in a restaurant to make some money. I thought, well, I'm going to make my money in a different way, in a more premium way.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I ended up working as a casual Fridays and Saturdays, sometimes Sundays, in a big department store. And I liked it, and I wanted more, and I wanted to know more about it, and I wanted to be the best in what I was doing, and I wanted to share my knowledge and my expertise, even as a young boy. So that's when I thought, well, this is really something for me.
And it's such a good grounding as well, isn't it? I think people who've had some experience of retail life, actually having customers coming up to you and asking your advice, or seeing actually, not in the kind of sales and marketing, actually what people are asking for and what they like and the things that they are drawn to. It's such a sort of golden experience, isn't it? Because then that stays with you in terms of being a commercial perfume, commercial brand.
It is, but you carry a huge responsibility, because that person goes home and she bought something after you have
recommended it,
sold to her or him and recommended a fragrance. So you carry that responsibility, and I was quite confident that I was good at it.
Yeah,
I loved it. And then ever since, I never left the fragrance.
And so, did you get into fragrance companies?
And then I had an amazing opportunity. I worked for 7 years at YSL.
Did you?
That was in the early 90s.
That must have been a good time to go there.
I was amazing. Amazing. Just thinking that the creator was still alive back then. Like, he was still very active in his fashion and in his fragrances and all of that. Yeah. Whereas today, all the designers are all dead.
Yeah.
That's the reality. So it's all pretty much marketing today. But still, that's why I have my own brand now, so I can do whatever I want.
Was your route through these companies in a sort of marketing channel or a sort of creative?
Sales, education, marketing, communication. I was really, really good at that. Merchandising and anything related to events. I did lots of events my whole career. Yeah, I've been working in this industry now for 30 years this year. Well, 30 years.
And I've obviously experienced all the different, the different sectors and different sides of it. So that when it came to your own brand.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that. So Goldfield Banks is Australia's first luxury fragrance brand.
Yes.
You were living, between France and Belgium. What was it that made you go to Australia?
Well, I was very fortunate. For many years, I had my own company, my own consultancy company.
Okay. And you were consulting other fragrance brands?
Fragrance houses. And so I did lots of their events, lots of launches. I traveled around the world, which was amazing. And, the most beautiful, prestigious brands that I worked with. And thanks to those brands and thanks to my work, I was able to travel around the world. Like, I worked a lot in Asia, I worked a lot in the Middle East, the United States and all of that. And then one of the brands one day asked me if I was interested in going to Sydney, flying to Sydney to host a PR launch and at the same time to host a training for the launch of that new fragrance. And I was like, of course I'm going to Sydney. Yeah, hell yeah, I'm there. So I didn't refuse that one. And I went to Sydney, and I remember I've got a really, really good friend of mine who lives in Sydney since many years. And she said, well, if you come to Australia, you might as well stay for another 4 or 5 weeks and just explore and enjoy the beauty of it.
And this was the first time you'd been?
It was the first time. And this year, it will be 10 years. 10 years ago, time flies. And which I did. So I flew up to Sydney and I stayed for another 4 or 5 weeks and I traveled around the country.
And it's a huge country. I mean, it's obvious to say, but it's massive, isn't it? You could fly for hours.
I know. And I came, I went there in August, and I remember going to swim because I thought Australia, to me, was tropical. I don't know. And this whole idea, this whole fantasy of Australia, thinking that it was a very tropical country all year long. So I went swimming, and people were looking at me thinking, but what's this guy doing swimming in August? And I thought, this is normal, isn't it? Anyway, so I realized that it was winter. In August.
Yeah.
Big time winter. I went swimming, and it was amazing. It was an amazing trip, and I met my partner during that trip.
Did you?
Yes.
In that very first trip?
In that very first trip.
Was that enough to sow the seeds straight away of, I'd like to be here? Or did that happen more gradually?
The thing is that I've been in this fragrance world for so many years, and I was getting closer to my 40th when I met him. And I thought, well, Dimitri, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? Like, do you really want to stay and work in this industry? You know, working in Paris with all these fragrance houses, working, you know, traveling a lot, which I actually do today. You travel more than but back then, I mean, we traveled quite a bit. And I thought, well, with this new generation coming up, I could feel that there was a shift. You know, there was a lot of jealousy in people. The younger generation didn't understand why I was traveling so much for all these brands and why they would pay, you know, so much money for me to fly to Dubai or whatever. They didn't really realize what I could bring to those companies. So I felt it was a new generation.
So things were changing a bit.
And so they thought, well, we want his job. Like, we want that guy's role. But I was a contractor. I was a freelancer. I had my own company. So, and then I thought, you know what? I don't want to work in this environment with all these young kids that are thinking that, you know, that they are better than me. So I thought, well, you know what? Why don't I just move to Australia, to the other end of the world? Obviously, I felt very confident that I would be and stay with my partner, which I love dearly. But then also, at the same time, during that same trip, one of the first things I did, I walked into a department store. And as I do everywhere I travel in the world, I go into a department store and I like to discover local brands. Yeah. I'm not going into a department store, let's say in Hong Kong, to find Chanel Dior. I'm going, I want to find something different. Local brands, which I did in Australia. So I was looking for a fragrance brand. I thought that Australia was going to be full of amazing fragrance brands because it's such a rich country when it comes to ingredients.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
The sandalwoods and the Baronias. And I mean, there's a lot of ingredients that Australia is exporting. So, and I was very disappointed to hear from this beauty advisor that there was no such thing. It didn't exist. It simply didn't exist. There was no fragrance that would celebrate that beauty of Australia. Yeah. So I thought, well, maybe there's a gap in the market, because for many years people have always asked me if I wanted to create my own brand, and I didn't want to. Why? Why creating another French brand? I mean, there's hundreds of brands.
What's the point of difference?
The point of difference? Yeah. Battling with all these French brands, and I wasn't in the mood for that. So I thought, if I launch something, if I do something, it will have to be something different, with a point of difference, like you mentioned. And so I came up with the idea of creating Goldfield Banks, like celebrating, you know, the extraordinary beauty of the country and its botanical richness, and starting from scratch, because that was a massive challenge. It was a huge challenge. I'm not sure if I would do it again now. I mean, obviously today it's a very successful story. Yeah. But the first few years were very challenging, I'm telling you.
But it's funny, you know, when you talk about the inception of the idea and how it came about. I mean, like you say, now you can look back and I'm looking at some of the fragrances here. You've got this hugely successful brand that works all over the world, and you're still with your partner.
Yes.
But you know, it is a giant leap, isn't it? To move continents, to move to the other side of the world. You couldn't get much further. And to set up your own brand, there's a real bravery and a real sort of pioneering spirit with that, which, I wonder if it's about finding exactly the right moment and the stars aligning. Because as you say, I mean, I might be slightly older than you. I'm nearly 50, but I don't know.
48.
Okay, so I'm slightly off. But you look back and there are moments of real clarity and bravery. And sometimes you surprise yourself, don't you? So, could I do that now? Or you kind of question where you are. But thank goodness you did, because
I did. And it seemed took a leap. And at the same time, I didn't realize how ambitious I actually was, because I wanted to create this beautiful fragrance house, and I just wanted to keep it very local. I remember I presented it to a local distributor, and then he was like, but Dimitri, this is never going to work. Like, who's going to buy an Australian perfume? And I was really, I mean, it was challenging, because there was a lot of people didn't believe in the project. But I did my market research, obviously, beforehand. Of course, I'm not going to put my money into that. And Australia deserves to have this beautiful brand. That's what I thought. And today, 22% of our business is still Australia, which is huge.
That's great.
So, but looking back, it was definitely challenging. But I was very, very fortunate to be surrounded by a few people, all French, My perfumer, my first perfumer was French, 5th generation perfumer from Grasse, who moved to Australia. It was in Australia ago, yes. So I found him. He was working at a supplier of ingredients, and he said, "Look, I've got all these natives." And so that's how I rolled into this whole native thing, because it was new and untapped. Still today, a lot of international brands are inquiring for these Australian natives. A lot of perfume houses are telling me, Dimitri, ever since you launched Goldfield Banks, a lot of, competitors are asking for Australian natives.
They've seen the success.
And they smell the fragrances. And but back then there was nothing. There was nothing. People didn't believe in it.
That's really interesting. And then the fact that, as you said, you did your research and there wasn't really any brands in that space in Australia. I mean, did you encounter much resistance and skepticism to your ideas?
Absolutely. And it didn't come from our customers, because from day one, local people and our customers, they embraced it from day one. So that's how we survived, because we sold. Our fragrances stayed away online. But the skepticism came mostly from buyers, and, because they thought, well, an Australian brand, they didn't really, Australians are sometimes very backwards when it comes to being a bit more avant-garde. You go to Italy, you have Italian brands, like you have Acqua di Parma, and they celebrate this beauty of Italy. So they didn't really think about all that. So it was quite hard. But now it's easier, of course, because now they see the success, and now they go, maybe we should consider that brand.
And they can feel some pride in the fact that Goldfield Banks is an Australian brand.
Feel pride, exactly. So it's different. It's a different way of seeing things today. But at the same time, I'm glad I had this challenge, because I'm a very humble person, I don't even think about the success of the brand today. I just work very hard. My whole team works very hard. But it's beautiful to see how we managed to convince and to seduce our audience and customers, and now it's blooming and blossoming. More and more retailers, and also the start was great, because obviously when I knew that there was a bit of reluctance in coming from some buyers, we went overseas. Like Belgium was one of my first countries, and Barney's in New York was my first actual big retailer, was Barney's.
Wow.
And they said, well, that's that brand, that's avant-garde. Yeah. Obviously, we all know Barney's shut down now, but back then for me, it was a dream come true. Yeah. I pinched myself when I walked into the store and I saw my brand at Barney's. It was such an institution. And that's when I thought, you know what? I think I've got something.
I'm onto something.
Yes. But it doesn't come without hard work.
No. And
determination and passion.
And in those intervening 10 years, and I'm looking at some of the fragrances here, I mean, you've been very busy. There's been lots of additions to the collection.
Years, I know. I started with 4 fragrances. And that's why it was funny, because last night I had dinner with Harrods, and I remember meeting Harrods about 5-6 years ago, and I had my 4 initial fragrances, and they said, Dimitri, we love your brand. We'd love to have it, but with 4 fragrances, you're not going to make $1 million. So come back when you have a bigger collection. And now it's amazing to see the brand doing so well at Harrods, and to see the team. And this is part of life. I mean, and it's part of my journey, and I'm very blessed.
And you strike me as someone that seems in common with lots of founders and people in this industry. You seem like you're someone that cares very much about team and building your network, and forming friendships through this world.
Yes, because it's a very small world.
Yeah,
it's a very small world, and we like to be surrounded by the good people, and by people that we like to work with, and people that make your brand a success overseas. In certain different countries, but it's all about networking, and it's all about But at the same time, we are far away in Australia, so that's my only little.
So you build up plenty of air miles, and when you,
oh my God, lots of air miles, and lots of sleepless nights, and yeah. But we keep in touch with Zoom, obviously, and all that, which is and I travel a lot. Like I probably come 3-4 times a year to Europe,
and cover off some of the major markets while you're here, and just do it all at once.
Yeah, doing it all at once. I mean, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
At time, but it's tiring.
I'm sure.
People don't realize.
I'm sure.
But it is.
Well, listen, we'll return to talk a little bit more about Goldfield Banks later. But part of Man in the Mirror is to ask men about some of their key call it bathroom essentials, or some of the key things on your bathroom shelf. Just because I'm nosy, and just because I think it can be an interesting conversation for other men to find out about your routine and products that you like and enjoy. So how about skincare for you, Dimitri? Is that a big part of your regime?
Oh, it is. It's a big part of my...
What kind of products do you use in the morning and evening?
Morning and evening, I have to. So, twice a day, obviously, I shower. But I need to have my cleanser, and I'm very classic, I'm very old school. Clarins.
Right.
Clarins cleanser for my face. It's like a little scrub, a daily scrub, which I love. And I've been using that for years and years and years and years. My God, Clarins, you better keep that in your collection. And I love Sisley products.
Yes, they're good.
I love Nuxe.
Okay, yep. Nuxe. Yeah.
Beautiful French brand. I have the cream, the moisturizing rich cream that smells like orange blossoms. Beautiful cream. I just love that one. And a bit of Shiseido, a lot of Clarins. I have a lot of Clarins products, actually. There's a face mask they have with mango extract, whatever. It smells divine, and I love it.
Love it.
I've traveled with all these little...
And you'll try different... You obviously stay fairly loyal to some of the Clarins ones, but you'll try different cleansers and moisturizers.
I do. We have a beautiful brand I think it's a New Zealand brand. It's called Trilogy. I mean, you can find it in pharmacies, but I have this cream based on rosapine or something. And it's an amazing cream. I love the texture, love the smell, love the result when I wake up after a boozy night. Look quite all right. But skincare is very important.
Yeah.
Like, I like to have my toothpaste. It's, Marvis.
Oh, I love Mars. Which one do you have? Do you have the classic mint? Oh, okay, you have
silver and whitening. And I even bought a toothbrush recently too.
Oh, did you? They do a really great, I think it's like Earl Grey, there's one of the Earl Grey tea or something, which is very delicate, but it's,
And I actually bought a toothpaste in Canada a couple of months ago called Le Bon. It's a very premium toothpaste, and it tastes very different. It's not based on peppermint or anything, but it's different, and it looks so good in the bathroom.
It's funny, it feels like, it's a separate issue, but it feels like with toothpaste, that now there's starting to be some
compliments.
Some premium brands in that space where normally you just go in your pharmacy and spend, £3 or £4 or whatever. You're starting to see, obviously Marvis has been there for a long time, but you're starting to see, I'm seeing online anyway, some brands that are a bit more premium, whether it's about the sort of the flavour of it or what the efficacy, but there's some interesting things going on.
I think it's about pampering yourself.
Yeah.
I like to pamper myself and buy things that really, that make me feel great, and also that I contribute to something different. I like to make sure that when I buy a product, it will often benefit, an independent, and not necessarily Nestle or L'Oreal or all these brands.
No, that's interesting.
There was a study recently, I can't remember, but almost everything you buy is linked to one of those big global groups. And sometimes I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to still
put some money in the pocket of a
smaller companies like especially in Australia, we have so many local brands. And I like to try them out.
Yeah.
Trilogy and Jurique is beautiful skincare brand, but just as long as I know it's all about pampering, and it's all about making sure that you buy something where you feel good.
Yeah, a little self-care moment.
Yeah.
It was interesting, you referenced a few times about things that smell good, and it's no surprise at all. Do you have a sort of shower gel or bath wash product that you like that's well fragranced? Are you loyal to something there or?
So in Australia, we use a lot of local products from the supermarket because they're good. They're simply good.
Yeah.
We have a few really local things, and when you look at the list of the ingredients and everything, you find out that there are some products that are very basic, but very good textures with a great smell, and using Australian botanicals, which I love.
Yes.
So I think it's quite it's quite important. For me, it's
I know exactly what you mean. I'd much rather support these kind of smaller challenger brands that where you can see it going back into the company rather than to The big conglomerates. Sort of.
Yes, but then there are products like, I say, my Clarins facial cream or whatever, my facial wash, that is still part of a global group. But it's just that I love that product. I love that texture. That's it.
You have a well-kept beard, I would say. Are you...
Really?
Oh, no, it's good. It looks neat. What do you do in terms of keeping your beard like that?
Every 2 days I trim my beard myself.
With a manual razor?
No,
electric?
Well, yes, with a manual razor, I just shave, and then I have my razor, like electrical razor. Yeah, very simple. I don't spend much money on it, to be honest.
Well, I think, us bearded guys, we kind of get away with that, can't we? I think so.
It's important, it's essential.
And obviously, fragrance is a massive part of your life and what you do. Do you find yourself able, should you kind of, test lots of competitors, or do you try and sort of go out in Goldfield Banks? What's your relationship with other brands?
I actually thought that today, this year, I want to spend more time discovering what other brands are doing. Because obviously, when we are in Australia, we are working on our fragrances and we work with different perfumers. We're sort of in our bubble, so we don't really know exactly what happens overseas. So we're not influenced by the fragrances that other brands do.
And the trends, some of the trends.
And I don't follow trends.
Yeah.
I'm not a trend person at all.
Interesting, the whole trend thing, because it must be like music or something. By the time, if you're trying to catch on to a trend and by the time you've developed it, there's probably a possibility that you miss it and everyone's moved on to something else. So it can be, I can imagine it'd be quite a dangerous thing to say, I must do something, an oud or whatever it is, because that development process is quite lengthy, isn't it?
I know. But then it's also about a personal choice. Like, look, we are launching a new fragrance in June that is based on ginger, for example. And you know what? Someone said the other day, ginger is very much in trend. Right. It's the upcoming new ingredient in perfumery. And I thought, well, I didn't even know. I didn't
it wasn't
think about that because it was all about my ginger in my gardens, in my house, up in the tropics, up north in far north Queensland.
Oh, so you've got another place further up, further north.
Yep. So it had nothing to do with the trends, or I'm not the guy that looks up like, what's the next thing? I create my fragrances for the people that will wear it, like that will wear them, like my audience. I'm not creating them because they're trendy.
So in this attempt to sort of look around at other brands, I mean, you don't have to sort of name all your competitors, but are there things that you wear outside of the Goldfield Banks world that you love still?
Of course. I have always been a massive fan of Serge Lutens.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So good.
Beautiful, especially their classic fragrances, the Ambre Sultan and the Orange Blossom. And Féminité du Bois is one of the most beautiful masterpieces, in my opinion, ever created in the fragrance world. Acqua di Parma, I love Acqua di Parma.
I do.
Because living in Australia, I mean, I wear Acqua di Parma and it sort of links me to my holidays when I used to travel in Europe.
Yeah.
And it's very Mediterranean, and I love the Mediterranean.
I was thinking, yesterday I was wearing Essenza, the Acqua di Parma, and I've said many times before in writing on the podcast, I mean, you can't go too far wrong. Like I just had this beautiful aromatic waft all day and I felt good. It's, I wouldn't wear it every day, but it's definitely such a feel-good fragrance.
No,
There's a lot to be said for that.
It is. And I wear them at specific occasions. And I even have this one fragrance. It's talking about being reminiscent. I have this Eau Dynamisante by Clarins.
Okay.
And my first girlfriend, she wore this, like, she wore a lot of fragrances, but she had Eau Dynamisante. And I bought it just to smell it once in a while, to be reminiscent.
Yeah.
Whenever I feel like,
When you want to think about,
I want to think of,
that time.
Paris, because she lived in Paris. It's important to have these fragrances. I've got this little collection of fragrances, and I don't necessarily wear them, but they're just there because they remind me of my previous life in Europe.
In Europe. What your role? I mean, the title of it is obviously founder of the brand and creative director. I'm really interested in this creative director role, and for the listeners, it'd be great to understand what that means? Because I guess some people might have the misconception that you're the perfumer and you're creating all the fragrances. What does creative director mean, and what do you do?
I actually do all the creative work from the beginning till the end. I mean, from the concept.
And so coming up there,
to the actual, to the visual, packaging, merchandising. I create everything. The only thing that I cannot create, however I make the brief, is the actual scent, is the fragrance. I'm not a perfumer.
Yeah.
People always get confused, They call me perfumer, and I'm not a perfumer. I'm creative director. But I work very closely with my perfumers. So I have to very, very precise brief. And I know exactly, when I start a new project, I know exactly how my fragrance will smell like.
So you're clear in your
very
head and your nose, and you just
very clear.
Wait till you smell it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I wait and challenge my perfumers until we get to that result. Sometimes it goes quick. Sometimes it takes maybe a year. But I know exactly what I want. So
I think
that's also my part of creativity, is to just, imagine the whole fragrance.
And I suppose there must be something about in that role, as you said, where you need to have that clarity and sure-sightedness of, I will know it when I'll know it when I smell it, rather than, it might be that, or that's good enough. You've got an idea and you've got a point in mind of,
yes,
it's this.
Yes, exactly. Because it's all, by the end of the day, it always comes to a beautiful end. Like, sometimes my team goes like, "Oh, Dimitri, you shouldn't, choose this yellow color for your next packaging. Just keep it white." But it's a process, and at the end of the day, my final product is, in my opinion, then perfect. I mean, what is perfection? Perfection doesn't really exist, but it all comes together. We are working on this fragrance, and sometimes we have a packaging done before we create. I mean, not completely done, but before we actually have the final fragrance.
Yeah.
I have a clear vision of what I want when it comes to packaging, when it comes to the fragrance and all of that. And it all melds together.
And then the bottles are beautiful as well. The new Island Lush is part of this range that they've got these gorgeous sort of reflective gold bottles, which are absolutely beautiful and will look so great on the shelf, won't they? It's the real... the lush is the perfect word for them. There's very luxe and lush.
Island Lush. Well, we have two collections in our fragrances. We have one collection called the Native Collection, which is anything in a transparent bottle. Every fragrance features 1, 2, sometimes 3, depending on the fragrance, Australian natives.
Yep.
The golden bottles are part of another collection called the Botanicals series.
Right.
And the Botanical series are all about development, botanical culture, about ingredients that are not necessarily native to Australia. How they are being harvested, and they grow in a very sustainable way in Australia. So lavender. Who would have thought that Australia has lavender?
Yeah.
Tasmania has the biggest lavender field in the world.
This is right.
So the quality of lavender is the same as the French lavender.
Yeah.
Lavande du Pays. However, it's more pristine, it's more organic, and it's, in my opinion, it smells more pure.
Right.
So we have those ingredients. We have agarwood now since 12 years. We have agarwood in the tropical part of Australia, which is very interesting, with an amazing quality of agarwood, the most organic, the most pure oil you can imagine, and passionate people that are working behind that wood. So it's all about people, isn't it, at the end?
Yeah. And the Australian landscape and ecosystem, and presumably is that the thing that inspires you for new ideas, new perfumes, just the world around you in Australia?
Exactly. We have a lot of ingredients, a lot of natives that are often used in skincare, but not necessarily in fragrances, because they are too aromatic or too earthy or too medicinal. So we have ingredients that smell too medicinal. So we have to be careful when we choose our raw ingredients. But we do have a whole future ahead of us. There's so many beautiful ingredients that we want to incorporate
introduce to the world.
Introduce to the world, exactly.
And what's you mentioned a new fragrance in in June. Are you able to say, is it top secret, or is it sort of announce what it is yet? Or ginger?
Based on ginger. It's by this time by an Australian ginger. We have so many ginger species all the way up north in the tropics, and I'm in love with ginger flowers. I don't know if you've ever seen a ginger lily.
No, I haven't.
But we have different shapes and different colors of ginger lilies, and they are the most stunning flowers you have ever seen. They are beautiful, they are rich, bountiful, they are complex, and nobody seems to know them. Nobody knows those. They're very tropical. I don't think you can actually import them in Europe. They would fade. Playing. But I was very much inspired by this whole ginger and
Oh, we look forward to that. Now, the name of the podcast is Man in the Mirror, and the idea is to talk to the guest about, their life and their work, but also what you see when you look in the mirror. So I'd be really interested, Dimitri, when you're doing your morning, bathroom routine, how do you feel about the man that looks back at you in the mirror now? Are you at a life stage where you're sort of comfortable and happy with what looks back?
Yeah, of course I am.
But some people aren't. No, I'm really glad you are.
Well, I mean, it took many years for me to get to that stage now where I think I've done something good. I think we're not perfect, but at least I've done something great and I've achieved something, and that comforts me. But then I'm a very anxious person, so I think about the future, and I think of all the things we still have to achieve and the things that we still have to do. And that grounds me again, thinking, Dimitri, never mind.
Yeah.
Just,
keep going.
Keep going.
There's more
Exactly.
And what about your sort of actual appearance now? As you're in your sort of late 40s. As you look in the mirror, are you sort of happy with what you see?
Physically, probably not. I mean,
Why not?
I see myself aging, of course.
Yeah.
And I used to be a very big gym guy. I used to go to the gym. I used to run. I used to swim when I lived in Europe. And ever since I have Goldfield Banks, I mean, I don't do any exercise at night except from walking in the morning and going for my little swim in the ocean in the morning in Bondi.
Is the office sort of walkable from your house?
It's a 50-minute drive.
Oh, okay.
It's easy. But we do have lots of beaches where I live. So I live sort of close to Bondi Beach. So, but that's it. I mean, and then I think, oh my God, I'm getting nearly 50, and I look at my body and I think, oh my God, I have to do something about it because I don't move that much anymore. So I'm actually happy. The whole weekend I was walking in Paris on the streets. So I walked for miles and miles.
It's nice, isn't it? It's good for the soul, I think, to get out on your...
And I love to eat.
Yeah.
There's so much good food. Like, look, last night we went to Zuma and all this beautiful food, and I'm thinking, well, why should I, say no?
Limit yourself, yeah.
Exactly, limit myself. So I thought, no, I love it.
Got it. And finally, Dimitri, what are the things that make you happy? What are the things that bring you joy?
I think my property up north,
Yeah.
sort of my haven, is sort of my...
Your escape.
My escape, 100%. We work very hard. When we say very hard, is basically, I get up, I wake up, I check my emails because, we're in contact with the US, markets that are already up and running. And then literally, I mean, my last message would probably be with our brand manager in France, and it's 11 p.m., time to go to bed. So we work really, really hard.
Is your partner in the same industry?
No, not at all. He works for an airline.
Oh, okay.
He works for an airline, but he works a lot. And
Is he traveling with an airline, or is he based?
Travels here in an airline, but he works a lot in our company as well. Like he's in logistics, and he helps me. Thank God he's there.
Yeah. But you get your happiness was derived from the tranquility of your property up north,
and I need it. I need that escape. That was the thing that was missing, I think, in my life, was that little escape, because Sydney is Sydney, and I love Sydney, but it's a working city at the end of the day. Even though we are very blessed with where we live and we have all these beautiful beaches, but it's nice to escape.
Yeah.
And I think physically and mentally I need that.
There's a recharge.
The more I need to get out there and just get centered and
do you find that place is good for ideas and inspirations as well?
100%.
Yeah. I mean, when you're more relaxed.
It's in green, it's lush.
Yeah.
We have the most beautiful fruits in the gardens, on the markets. We have the most beautiful birds. We have all these little sunbirds. It's another world, and it's paradise. Everyone that comes says, "Oh my God, it's absolutely paradise."
Sounds idyllic.
Yeah. Then, of course, we're surrounded by sort of snakes, and we've got crocodiles a little bit further. It's quite wild.
Check your boots when you put them on.
Check your boots, exactly. Oh, I always do. It's funny, isn't it? I always check my boots for my slippers. But yeah, no, it inspires, and it's a project that we have in common with my partner, and we love it. We absolutely love it. It's a beautiful part of the world. It's very remote, but it's beautiful.
Oh, amazing. Well, Dimitri, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to spend some time with you this morning to hear more about the brand and what's to come. As always, I will mention the products in the program notes so people can find out about some of the things that you referred to. And of course, there'll be more information about Goldfield Banks and where people can find out more. So look, enjoy the rest of your stay, safe home, and I'll see you again soon.
I will. I love London. Thank you so much.
See you. Thank you. It's funny, isn't it, what fate and serendipity will do? I'm always struck in those conversations by the paths that people take, and the fact that Dimitri just took himself to Australia to see what was happening there and fell in love and met his partner, and also, took this brave and bold step of thinking, I want to set up a company here and look how well it's doing. I think it's 10 years on. So Goldfield Banks doing fantastically well, and they've got some great new launches this year, including Island Lush that came out in January, which I heartily recommend you check out. It's absolutely beautiful. Such an interesting conversation. I had a really great time chatting to Dimitri. He was so much fun, and I appreciate the time he spent because he was on a whistle-stop tour. Had a few days in London, as he was saying, and also then travelling elsewhere in Europe to see some of the other retail partners and business partners of the brand. So it was fantastic to spend some time with him. If you want to find out more about Goldfield Banks, their website is goldfieldandbanks.com. That's GOLDFIELD Banks, BANKS. That's Goldfield and Banks with the word and.com. On Instagram, it's Goldfield_and_Banks_Australia. Goldfield_and_Banks_Australia. But I'm sure if you just type in Goldfield, then some good things will happen. But well, we're checking them out on Instagram, and you'll see some of the beautiful bottles and the descriptions of some of the fragrances. I think, he's been a real pioneer in terms of the native botanicals of Australia, and certainly lots of other brands are now taking notice and following suit and heading to that part of the world to check out new raw materials and ingredients. But Dimitri and Goldfield Banks were there first. So I hope you enjoyed that chat. If you want to find out more about Man in the Mirror, you can do. I'm on Instagram at Man in the Mirror Pod. And you'll find out there about the new guests that are coming up and some of the episodes that have gone before. So I heartily recommend you have a look, and it would be amazing if you wouldn't mind leaving a review wherever you listen to your podcasts so that more people can find me. So my thanks to Dimitri, and my thanks to you, of course, for listening, and I'll be back with another Man in the Mirror next time. Take care.